Hi Maricopa. So what is a poetry slam? Well, a poetry slam is a performance poetry competition that was invented in the 1990s by a Chicago construction worker by the name of Mark Smith. Now what Mark Smith wanted to do is he wanted to bring poetry to people who wouldn't normally listen to poetry. So he created basically a bar game called Poetry Slam. What is a poetry slam? Well, a poet must come up to the stage, must bring a poem of their own work. It must be no more than 3 minutes long, cannot have any props, cannot have any musical accompaniment. The audience will listen to the poem, and after the poem is done, the poet is judged by 5 random members from the audience who have a score panel. They're given a score of 0.0 to 10.0. And there's 5 of them, so like Olympic scoring, the low is dropped and the high is dropped, and then your score is added up from the 3 in between. And then you go through 1 or 2 rounds, or 3 rounds sometimes, and you decide who the winner is by who has the highest score.
Arizona is shaped like the blade of a guillotine, and everything in the Copper State is designed to kill. So keep your cell phones primed with numbers 9 and 1 at all times. It's 115 degrees in the shade, and there's never any shade.
Keep mind of horse crossing, mule crossing, elk crossing, snake crossing. Birds above, circle, ignore. Badger Springs, 5 miles ahead, no services. Apparently littered with badgers.
You were my shelter. I was broken and I walked through your front door, sauntered in like I owned the place, noting the cobwebs and the Virgin Mary holding her newborn baby as she hung next to the porch light. Your floors were tiled. The walls were bare except for a single dirt outline of a shoe where someone had mercilessly murdered a crane fly.
Poetry is not just an art form, but it is also a way of social expression. It's a way of marginalized people to express themselves in a culture that for a long time was a monoculture, where it was basically just white America.
Frustratingly coming to the final realization that what they want simply ain't me. Pack up their brushes and they're gone. Half complete, another almost masterpiece is left on the floor with nothing more than her turpentine tears for comfort. Then here comes another one. The perfect artist came to scrape the paint off everything I used to be, trying to create their own version of mastery. But what about me?
We will fight! And that's exactly what it feels like to be on your period.
Like the morning sun, she sent shivers down my spine, and our souls were connected as one. She was my everything.
I didn't know, when my dad finally left, that my mom couldn't sign the mortgage on her own. I didn't know how hard she had to fight to get that job. When we danced and celebrated in the living room, that we would finally have something more than nothing.
Listen down, my words are freed from their cage. You would love the way I bleed and how I seep through all your pages, but the beauty is that only when they're wet do the gutters care to talk.
The guilt I carry around burns me down until I'm just another piece of ash. I know doing this doesn't make me less of a mother. It just makes me a mother to a dead baby. I did not want to do this. I did not want to have you either. 17-year-olds can only do so much.
When we worked together, we hit the sirens and drove to the trailer park we called Wyoming, because nothing good ever happened there. We got the call at 3 a.m. Unresponsive infant. The parents stood over us, large and stiff and weeping, like mountains in spring.
Some nights, I just want to sleep. But if poetry gets horny, then I don't really have a choice. She pushes me out of bed, hands me a pen, and says, "You know how I like it?" She prefers a little pre-poem foreplay before I write it, so I let my pen hover over the page so as to tease her with the tip of my bic.
I wanted to thank a God I don't really believe in for the way she knocks all the air out of my lungs so there was no breath left in me to carry it to her, because I think it would have freaked us both the fuck out. Or perhaps more accurately, there's a levee living in my mouth built from all the other I love yous that came flowing like a river I've drowned in.
I know very intimately how toes can be so goddamn sensitive to corners and chairs. I know mine are like magnets, so my body brings blood cells to the surface like magnadoodles or Etch-a-Sketch.
You see, society, why can't you just accept us all? You see, nowadays, finding a real friend is like winning the Powerball. And why? Why did you teach us that we must take the protocol in the nightfall? Because apparently the oddballs come out in the urban sprawl instead of teaching us to love and not to brawl.
And the GOP wants my dad dead, and this is no whodunit. I can go to the Capitol building and see their mugshots lining the halls. And I know that we are all inevitably blue screens, a collection of endings in the meantime, but I also know that my future children will grow up never meeting their grandpa.
Now, it's a fact in Poetry Slam, sometimes the best poet doesn't win, sometimes they do. Remember, this is a bar game, it's a gimmick, it's a fun gimmick. It's brought poetry to so many people, myself included, who would have never attended a poetry reading without the implementation of the competition. But I think if you come to a Poetry Slam, you will walk away a fan of poetry.
There are 60 people in Maricopa tonight here to listen to poetry. That's not something you normally do. Maybe you should do it more often.